So welcome everybody to the Integrated Low Vision Services Workshop. I'm Sarah Halliwell. I'm the Partnership and Innovation Lead for Visionary, and I'd like to introduce you to Sarah French, who's the CEO of Site Service Gateshead and South Tyneside, Stephanie Cairns, who's the NHS Lead Optometrist for the Low Vision Services, and Carl Taylor, who is the Commissioner for the Local Authority and Gateshead. Just a few housekeeping points. We've got an hour for the session. Sarah and the team are going to do a half-hour presentation. You're all muted at the moment, but at the end of the presentation, we'll have time for questions. So put any questions in the chat, and I'll try and monitor the chat as we're going along and make sure that we cover any questions. Also, if you want to ask a question, put your hand up and unmute yourself to ask the question. The presentation, Sarah will be sharing a screen and doing a presentation. If anybody finds it inaccessible, she'll be talking through all the points on the presentation. If it's not accessible, or if you want a copy of it afterwards, please email us at Visionary. We'll send on the presentation. I think that's about it. At the end of the session, we're going to run a poll, which will just be 2 questions. So please stay in and I'll launch that poll at the end. And I think I've covered everything now. So I'll hand you over to Sarah and the team and enjoy the presentation.
Hi, thank you, Sarah. Thanks very much. So I'm Sarah French, I'm the Chief Exec at Site Service, and we've been running the Low Vision Service for way before I joined the organisation. A long time. Stephanie will probably know better. It's a fantastic service, and it's integrated into our other activities that we provide. And over the last year, we've undertaken quite a significant review to ensure that it's aligned with our local authority provision and the organisation's overall objectives and outcomes. So that's really what we'll be focusing on today, and how the service incorporates community optometry, the local authority contract, and all of our other provision to encompass one coherent journey for people with low vision. So I'll just share my screen. Fingers crossed this works. 1 second. Share screen. Okay, excuse me. So as Sarah Halliwell suggested, everything that's contained within the slides I'll cover and I'll talk through. Obviously, we're happy to share these afterwards, along with our contact details. So if people do want to ask any questions over and above what we get through today, because time is limited. So introductions, which we'll come on to. These are just a bit of context for the service. So our low vision service only covers Gateshead at the present time, but the area that the organisation covers is South Tyneside and Gateshead. So in South Tyneside, we have 5,000 people living with sight loss and 790 are registered blind. And in Gateshead, we have 6,700 people with sight loss, and of those 1,000 and over 1,000 are registered blind. Both of those are above the national average and are set to rise. And obviously you'll all recognise those from the RNIB sight loss data tool, which is a fantastic resource. In terms of our organisation structure and how we organise our services, we based this model on the Henshaw's Pathway to Independence framework. Last year, we established that as a pathway across the organisation. So people are referred into site service. We assess the individual to produce a personalised support plan. That support plan can include a whole host of different interventions, and these range from rehab, our enablement activities, a counselling service that we've just established, information, advice and guidance, which is the team are all qualified to provide high quality IAG, which is followed up and reviewed as part of that process. Obviously the low vision service, which we'll be talking more about, and we have a vision support programme, which is lottery funded, and it encompasses a lot of our technology support, group facilitation and peer mentoring activities. On completion of the interventions, we then review how well that's gone. And one of the significant things that we've done across the organisation is agree a set of outcomes that everything that we provide falls within these outcomes for people, which is around improving health and well-being, helping people live more independently, reducing isolation and increasing confidence and empowerment. So within the personal plan, the Devon Insight MOT assessment has supported this model hugely. We incorporate and make sure that people's actions that are identified in the personal plan are really clearly set against one of these outcomes or more of these outcomes in some cases. And the MOT assessment, because it's traffic lights, really helps us prioritise what those outcomes are. So within the interventions, the vision support, for example, the low vision, it provides a similar assessment, but that's undertaken by our lead optometrist, who then develops a plan and will look at what interventions are needed. So for the low vision, those interventions might be to refer back to one of our other programmes. It might be additional low vision related aids and adaptations and equipment, or it might be some supportive rehab alongside some of the aids and equipment that have been provided through the low vision service. And then again, that's reviewed 6 weeks later. The timescales for assessment, the plan and the review are all based on the CARE Act. So once we receive a referral, we ensure that contact's made within 2 days, the plan is and the assessment is complete within 2 weeks, and we review that 6 weeks later. So it's quite a robust journey within the organisation, and people can fluctuate between each of the services and dip in and out of this cycle as their needs require. Stephanie or Carl, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, can I just pick up on, as a commissioner, it's obviously important that we monitor these outcomes that Sarah's mentioned there. So just to pick up on the point about the timescales, the 2 days, 2 weeks and 6 week timescales, they are incorporated into the performance indicator information that we receive from site service. So we can monitor that, and it's also something we look at as well when we do our reviews and quality assessment frameworks as well. So so we keep on top of that as well, because they're in line with the CARE Act, and obviously they're included within the contract that we have.
I think
the only bit I would say from the optometry, from the low vision point of view, is this is all very new. Having to monitor the outcomes that's a bit of a change, and we're still feeling our way a little bit with that, because the way that optometry and primary care works, we're not under the same obligations to report. So so it's a work in progress.
I think what's been interesting is, sorry, Carl, carry on.
Sorry, Sarah. Yes, just to say as well, as a commissioner, we're very interested in qualitative outcomes as well, and these are qualitative outcomes as opposed to quantitative outcomes. So we know the numbers, that's important to capture, but then these outcomes here in regards to improved well-being, living more independently, reducing social isolation, increasing confidence, or qualitative outcomes are really important to us because they measure the impact that the service is having on individual people as opposed to just the numbers.
I think within all of our activities, we obviously keep the numbers and the demographics of those people who we're seeing across all of our services. And we've done quite a lot of work with the CCG over the last year, looking at how we can embed these outcomes into the reporting and the performance management for our CCG contract. They weren't originally included. And we felt as an organisation that the benefit and the impact that the service actually has on people wasn't being captured by just providing the hard data. So by embedding these across the whole organisation and monitoring them, it captures all of our activity and the impact that it has on individuals. So that, I think, setting the outcomes and finding a mechanism supported by the pathway to independence, the sight loss MOT document, all of that has really helped us evidence the impact that all of our services have. So moving on, the low vision service, which is key within the organisation, the overall aims and the point of the service are coming in quite new to the sector. One of the things I struggled with for the first few months in my post was, what is the point of the low vision service? What are the benefits, and how does it support our other work? And why is it a better model than others? And so a lot of questioning, a lot of discussion with the team. It significantly reduces waiting times for people. It reduces the number of appointments that they have to have, and it provides easily accessible services within the community that people attend more freely, I think. It improves communication and access because all of those services are within one team. And better outcomes for people, which is fundamentally why we're all here. And by integrating those services, we can ensure that the outcomes are much more targeted and much more specific to meeting an individual's needs rather than a blanket approach to providing support. Carl, Stephanie, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, can I just jump in there and say that obviously another element that's really important about the low vision services in relation to early intervention, which is obviously key here and is very important in terms of producing better outcomes for people as well. It's complementary with our statutory provision.
So I'll just, sorry, it's Stephanie Cairns. I'll just give you a very brief kind of explanation about why it reduces the waiting times and things. So all optometrists, all of my professional colleagues, and also dispensing opticians, we all have, as part of our qualification to be working, we have an element of being able to support people with low vision. However, within our actual funding in primary care, we're not funded to do anything beyond a general NHS sight test. And an NHS sight test, the main point of that is actually to identify for glasses. And then if there is anything else beyond that, whether it be a health concern that needs treatment or potentially the magnifiers and things, we're not actually funded to do that, even though within our professional scope, we can help people. And that means that as a general rule, what would happen is that a primary care optometrist would refer into the hospital process for a low vision service. Now, they could be being referred for a health condition as well that needs treatment, but as part of that, they're also expecting the low vision magnifier and probably the ECLO. However, because the hospital waiting times are months, if not longer. By the time someone actually accesses the low vision part of the service within the hospital, it can be a good year or more bit after the original referral in. In Gateshead, a primary care optometrist can do 2 referrals if they want to, or they can at least signpost the patient and tell the patient about the fact that there's a low vision service in the area that they can access themselves. Because it's NHS funded, there's no issues with restriction on cost of magnifiers or access. And that makes a massive difference to the people in our area. So some of our patients will be referred in for their hospital because they've got an eye condition that looks like it might need some treatment, and also referred to directly for low vision. But they also know that within our service it isn't just magnifiers and lighting. They know that they're referring into an integrated service and that people will be accessing rehab and any other support much earlier. And some of the optometrists will refer for a magnifier even when actually all they're really needing is a good lighting assessment, because it's actually the other parts of the service that they're also asking for support from. And within normal other areas outside of Gateshead, that's not what happens. We tend to refer into the hospital for the health condition and for the magnifier, but not specifically for the other support. So when we talk about early intervention and reduced waiting times, it isn't just about if someone accesses a magnifier or lighting. It's very much about actually accessing all of the support an awful lot earlier. The other thing is that some of the NHS guidelines around certain eye conditions, particularly dry macula, over the last couple of years, NICE have said that primary care optometrists no longer have to refer to the hospital if someone has definitely only got dry macula. Now, the problem with that is that actually, unless there's a easy access low vision service, then people are not necessarily going to actually get referred to it. And we see quite a few of our patients who've got early dry macula who, if within a normal situation outside of Gateshead, you wouldn't be considering referring them in to the hospital to be assessed, because you know that the ophthalmologist doesn't want to see them. Whereas within Gateshead, it's quite common for us to actually see people with early stage dry macula. Now, what usually happens is it turns out they've got lots of other issues as well because of the age of the person, and it isn't all to do with their vision, but at least we can start helping to put interventions in place and helping them access other things as well. So there are quite a few benefits both to the clients and the patients, but also professionally. The local optometrists know that they're getting a good service and it's worth referring people to. We've got a very good word of mouth set up between us, and that's basically because the service has been running for 12 years or more, and it's obviously built up over that period of time.
I think on the back of what Stephanie's just described, the majority, I don't have the percentages, but a large majority of our patients have macular related conditions. Very few have anything other, and also the vast majority of clients again have additional health needs and additional health conditions, and obviously age related health conditions as well. Thanks, Stephanie, it's helpful. So in terms of outcomes, since April this year, we've supported 485 people. Obviously, we haven't been running in-person low vision service since April. We reopened for face-to-face visits in end of August, early September. And take-up has been quite slow in terms of face-to-face appointments. So most of these have been telephone-based triage calls, information, advice and guidance, and equipment support. But the impact across all of our services has been phenomenal, with 96% reporting improved emotional and well-being, mental health, 87.5% reporting physical health and well-being, 96% feel less socially isolated, and 100% reported feeling more confident and empowered, which are fantastic figures. And again, that's mirrored across all of our services. So we collect this information, again, going back to the outcomes and the frameworks that we use, we collect this for each of our programs and services. And it's it's great to have the low vision service now embedded in that, because it captures why all those things that Stephanie's just described about having easier access and integrating different professions and earlier intervention, it really demonstrates the impact that that has on people. In terms of partnerships and referral sources, as Stephanie described, optometrists are a key referral source, adult social care and community health teams, which I would include the site service internal referrals, because for our other services, adult social care is one of our main referral sources. So the original source would be adult social care, and then internally we refer people between the different programs, which significantly includes low vision. Self-referrals, again, most of those will come on the back of having visited an optometrist who's then told them about the service. And then we have hospital services, including ECLOs. So that could be direct from a consultant or through the ECLO service.
Can I jump in here as well? Is that
Sure.
okay? So again, partly because we've been running for a long time, but also because of the optometrist input, if we get a referral in from adult social care, we have to rely on the patient telling us or the client telling us what's wrong with the vision. And you do occasionally get referrals that actually they really just could have done with a decent pair of glasses. And having an optometrist involved, we can ascertain whether or not they actually do have low vision that isn't correctable. If they've got cataracts that need removing, quite often people haven't had regular sight tests. So I can do that referral back into the hospital to get treatment if required. We occasionally pick people up with another eye condition. They come in, we think they've got one problem, and it turns out that actually they're getting wet macula and we need to fast track them into the process. So we can use the same referral processes that we would use in primary care for our health of our patients. So there's a real mix, and if you don't have optometrists involved in the service, you can't check for glasses. You're not allowed to refract if you're not an optometrist. And also from a health point of view, we're in a much better position to ascertain what's actually going on and identify and also keep our data up to date so that our information is correct. Because some people might tell you they've got glaucoma, but they've also got dry macula as well. And little things like that, which can make a big difference to the information and how we support people. There was one other thing as well. I don't know. It might be the one might come back to me.
Thanks, Stephanie. So going back to the main aims of the low vision service, that would be helpful just to have a recap on the reducing waiting times and how the setup for the low vision service and how that model works actually contributes and achieves that aim. And we've probably touched on these. Well, obviously it's a central location, it's community based. It's part of there's a multidisciplinary team on site, as Stephanie described. So it's reducing the waiting times for all of those services. Quite often we'll, or where we can, if someone's coming into the clinic for a low vision assessment, we'll endeavour to have the other services available to provide their interventions as and if needed. They don't have to wait for kit and equipment to be provided. They can test it with the optometrist and rehab there and then, be shown how to use it by the rehab or the enablement team there and then they leave with that equipment with them. It's one point of referral, again, as Stephanie's touched on, for health and social care. So people can access the low vision service with an optometrist, and again making sure that those referrals are accurate, and it's fewer appointments as a result of all of those. Stephanie or Carl, did you want to come in?
No, that's fine.
Better outcomes for people. I think, as I described earlier, for me, the consistency of key performance indicators and the outcome data is key to this. Making sure that everything that we do to support people is captured and that it is very personal and those, it's not so much about what was provided, but it's much more outcome focused, helps us tailor an individual response for people. So for me, that we've been able to shift to that way of working with the low vision contract through the CCG, that's been really beneficial because it enables us to provide a very bespoke service for individuals. We have better clinical data, as Stephanie described, through the optometrists. We are, and not just through optometrists, through our contracts, we're able to access GP information much easier. We can then use that alongside the optometrist data and their assessments, which gives a much clearer indication of people's eye conditions. We've described the earlier intervention. Patients get a better understanding of their eye condition. Quite often, particularly where it's felt there isn't a solution, or people often leaving the hospital don't fully understand their eye condition, for lots of reasons I'm sure everyone here is very well versed in. But the low vision service gives time and space for that conversation. And I think talking through various eye conditions with optometrists is really, really critical as part of that. And then we also have the referrals and connectivity with the complementary interventions. A lot of those are internal, but we refer out of site service as well. So we work really closely with our age concerns in local areas. We work closely with falls teams, with the frailty alliances, to make sure that people are referred appropriately and as they need to, but also those referrals can come into us to really raise the profile that low vision may have on those other areas of care.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
I just, along with what you were saying about better understanding an eye condition, I do think that does make a big difference. Quite often from a primary care point of view, we're picking up a problem at the beginning. So at that point, we're still hopeful that there may be something that can be done, and people are just clutching to that idea they're being referred to the hospital. So if you spend a lot of time trying to explain at that initial appointment when it's first identified that there's a problem, people aren't in a position ready to kind of understand and accept. Then they end up at the hospital and they have very quick appointments. They might have lots done in those appointments, but the actual time they're spent talking with the clinician tends to be quite limited. And even if they've had multiple appointments, they might have been told something at the first one. By the time they've finished through the hospital eye service journey, which can be 4 or 5 years or more for some people, they've forgotten what was told to them right at the beginning. When they come back out of the hospital eye service process through maybe an ECLO or something like that, we often find that people don't necessarily continue to have regular sight tests in community. So they haven't had the opportunity to speak to an optometrist in community or a dispensing optician in community. But equally, though, even if they have been in, there's no funding for that extra conversation. And I know it sounds silly that having a conversation with someone has to cost time, but unfortunately the way the process works, it does. And sometimes people need more than just a 2-minute conversation about what's actually been happening with their eye care. Actually being able to talk to someone when they've had a chance to think about things a little bit and digest some of the information they have been told, even if they're still not willing to accept that this may be where they are, it actually can help that process of acceptance. So the low vision clinic and having an optometrist involved, it has an overlap between the clinical and also the functional side of vision loss. And I think that's a big difference from just within a sort of a sight test process where we're still very much on a clinical basis. But sitting within a low vision clinic where I know I've got more time to speak to someone and explain things, I can actually describe what's happening to the family member that's with them, to anybody else that's there, and just help them appreciate that the reason they keep losing things when they've put them down, that's all part of the process. Or if they've been seeing things, visual hallucinations, which I'm sure many people are very very aware of on this call. And quite often some people still haven't grasped that that actually could be part of their eye condition, even when they've been having problems with macular degeneration for a number of years. So actually having time to be able to discuss that in more detail, I find that really beneficial for myself. Actually, as a professional, I feel like I'm really giving the best that I can with my time and my knowledge, but also from the clients that we're supporting's point of view, and they know that they can come back to us and ask questions, you know, if they require.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. And lastly, communication and access. And again, I think we've kind of touched on all of these. Significantly, I think making sure that we're getting appropriate referrals. Quite often, as Stephanie described earlier, people would be referred to our service, but without checking their eye condition with an optometrist. It's difficult sometimes to pick up on whether or not that is an appropriate referral for sight service through our low vision or our other activities to be interacting with. Wider engagement opportunities, again, just looking at the connectivity with our other services and our partners and our networks activities as well. And that's in and out of the sight loss sector. Improve professional relationships. I think it's fair to say that by integrating all of our activities within sight service and running them in parallel and really complementing how they all work together, I think that's given a better professional understanding of how those services do run in parallel. So I think, Stephanie, you're nodding, which is great. I think for me, it's about connecting the CCG contract and the clinical work. Excuse me. I had a timer. I forgot it would actually go off. I think connecting the clinical activity with the local authority and the adult social care side and bringing those together, I think has really increased the understanding of what each service is providing and where they sit alongside of each other, which for me is really fundamental in making sure that they work together and achieve the best that they possibly can. Again, looking at CVI data and making sure that that's really accurate.
We spend a lot of time referring people back to be re-registered. So people who've been registered as sight impaired, but actually now their vision has deteriorated. So a lot of people are discharged from the hospital after wet macular treatment and are registered sight impaired. But actually within a period of time after that, it could be 5 years or more, you know, but because the macular treatment is stabilizing things, but not improving things, your vision just generally continue to deteriorate just a little bit over time. So not everybody has to be re-registered, but we do that as part of the service, which again won't happen if you don't have an optometrist involved with the process. So I would like to think that Gateshead's figures are more accurate than some of the other parts of our region anyway.
Yeah. And that's our next step on data collection. And again, there's a word missing on this slide. I'll add it if anyone does want copies of the slides. Connectivity with other services. So it tags in to wider engagement opportunities. But for me, that's absolutely fundamental to make sure that we're connecting people with either, be it peer support activities, whether it's technology support, whether it's other clinical support from other providers, whether it's adult social care, whether it's CCG provision. It's making sure that as a service provider, we are well connected and well placed to make sure that people are accessing the services that they need at the time they need them.
Can I just say something here as well? There's a lot of changes within the eye care sector. There's a lot beyond the sort of the sensory support that everyone on this calls for. But there's a national ophthalmology transformation program that's started before COVID, but it's now properly kicked off. And this is looking at identifying how we change the system, because we're well aware that the hospital is clogged up with lots of appointments and that primary care is being underutilised, and what can be done back in community at normal opticians. So there's a lot of work going on across the sort of the health side of ophthalmology and eye care, and having the connection of having optometrists involved, I think, has helped Sarah, as coming into a new post, start to really understand how the support side of things should be sitting better within what isn't happening, we know at the moment, but hopefully will potentially be happening as things get re-identified and re-looked at. Now, unfortunately, there's still funding issues around all of that, but there is a lot of national work going on, and I hope that Site Service is going to be really well placed to be able to pick up on that as and when we get to the changes.
Thanks, Stephanie. That's a really, the connection with the national strategy is a really, really significant point. Yeah. And that's the end of our slides. And so we've left quite a lot of time for questions in the hope that everyone wants to find out a little bit more of some or all of our presentation. I think that,
There is a question. Shall I read the question out? Would that be the easiest thing to do? So it sounds like a dream team. Thank you. So to what extent, if any, has the Local Eye Health Network or Clinical Commissioning Council's low vision and rehab framework influenced or supported this, in brackets clearly, person-centred, holistic and seamless provision? Or are you just blessed to have local people who have collaboration in their DNA? Well, the original low vision service was set up as a pilot alongside a number of others around the country that the RNIB was involved with, and this actually was before my time as well. So I think it was about 13 years ago, and at that point we had something called primary care trusts, PCTs. Yeah. So the funding was all very different from the NHS point of view, and I wasn't involved that exactly, but there has definitely been an element of blessing regarding optometrists and getting optometrists involved. One of them, our lady that was clinical lead at the beginning, is still involved in the service. She doesn't do as many days now, but she still works with us. And we've had various other optometrists who get involved periodically, and it helps build their experience of supporting people who are visually impaired as well, that then they can take it back out into practice. So there's a real influence of just having a really good connection, because everyone knows it's a good service. People like to get involved. That helps. Obviously the Clinical Commissioning Council's low vision and rehab framework, I was very aware when that came out, and I've obviously read through all of that, but most of that we were already doing, to be honest, though obviously along with the work that Sarah's been trying to do with integrating our outcomes and making it more evidence-based, that kind of fits in a little bit with that as well. The Local Eye Health Network, I think there was involvement when somewhere going back when our Local Eye Health Network was set up. Unfortunately, in the Northeast, our Local Eye Health Network has stalled, so I wouldn't like to give them too much credit for what we've been doing at Site Service in the last 2 years, but there certainly was influence at the beginning, and certainly helping with that networking so that people knew about, so the ophthalmologists knew about it. But most of our networking has been done by just sending letters, because the low vision service, at the end of each appointment, we send a letter back to our consultants if the patient is still under a consultant, to let them know that we've seen them and this is what we've done. We send a letter to the GP to let them know that we've seen them and this is what we've done. And if the patient identifies as a community primary care optometrist, we send them a letter as well. And I think that makes a massive difference, because certainly in primary care, we don't often get feedback from the hospital. So my colleagues who are sitting in the opticians down the road, for them to get a letter and say that they know that Site Service has seen this person, they know they've been given these bits of equipment, and they also know that the extra support's been put in place, it has made a massive difference, and it makes them want to refer into us. And I would say that same from the consultants. We've had some really positive feedback from the consultants that work at the local, they do like an outreach clinic in Gateshead, and we get some really positive feedback from them, because they know that the patients that they're seeing, if they direct them to us, will get that support. But obviously that all builds time. It's part of it is the fact we've been running for a while and we've been sending these letters, and word of mouth has a massive difference.
I think one of the fundamental aspects has been the willingness to review the service from both commissioners, but to review it jointly. Certainly, when I first started, so 2 years ago, there wasn't a huge amount of connection between the council's contract, which is the statutory rehab and enablement provision, and the CCG low vision service. And I think it was probably a year or so ago, Carl, where you and our CCG commissioner, who couldn't make it today, sat down and we took a proposal for our new outcome framework. So we developed a new outcome framework, and so we approached both the council and the CCG to see if we could promote a more joined up approach where we were evidencing different activities and different data, but underneath the same outcomes, which was very new for the CCG, probably not quite as new for Carl, although the actual outcomes were new. I know the council is very proactive in terms of moving to that shift to outcome focused commissioning. So from our point of view, it was a really opportune moment to pull together our outcome framework and have that joint discussion with both commissioners. So for me, that was a really key part of joining it all up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll reinforce that point, Sarah. We have something called the Gateshead system in Gateshead, which is working across health and the council. So we not just this service, but a number of services across Gateshead where they're either joint funded between the council and health, or like this service, we work very closely. And so, yes, just to pick up on Sarah's point, we also, once we agreed the outcomes, we also had a meeting earlier this year, myself and one of the commissioners from CCG and Sarah, and we're also looking to do maybe joint quality assessment reviews moving forward. There's the potential for pooled budgets as well, so we could also look at just pooling the budgets between the CCG and the council. And there's various other things that we can look at as well. But it's very much, we think as a local authority that this is very much a service that works between the council and the CCG.
Sarah, there's a couple of questions coming here about outcome measurements. So from Nick about the CRM that you use to support sight loss MOT, does it enable you to measure progress? And then also from David about measuring outcomes and any scales that you're using, any particular scales.
Okay, so in terms of the outcomes, to undertake an assessment, we use the sight loss MOT, which Devon Insight developed, which is brilliant. It traffic lights people's needs. We then back that up with the Warwick Edinburgh Mental Wellbeing Scale, WEMWEBS, much easier. So WEMWEBS is used to at the beginning, and then at the end so at the review point 6 weeks later, we then follow up both the traffic light from the MOT, the sight loss MOT, and also the WEMWEBS, and they back each other up really nicely. So if someone's progressed from red to green on the MOT, that's reflected within the WEMWEBS scale. What we do at the 6 week review, as part of that conversation, we ask our outcome questions. So do you feel that the low vision service has helped you live more independently? And then we also, so that's just a yes or no. And we tried to do that on a scale and it didn't work. So that's just a yes or no, but then we back that up with, and what aspect? Was it the equipment? Was it the rehab? And because it's part of a conversation, we do capture more beneath that than just the yes, no. But we find as statistics, we are able to back those up with the WENWEBS tool, which is nationally recognised, along with the Sightless MOT, which has been adopted by a lot of organisations in the sector. So for me, it just provides really simple outcome data that's really easy to use at the drop of a hat, and we measure that monthly. And we collect it all, sorry Nick, we collect it all on Charity Log, which I have 2 colleagues who are now Charity Log experts. I'm not. It's brilliant, but it all relies on extension databases. And if Carol was here, she'd definitely be laughing about the and I don't know if anyone from Devon Insights here, but they provided us some brilliant training when we adopted the MRT. And yeah, so Carol's now a whiz and gets it all in Charity Log, and then just pulls off reports at the end of each month. So it's not too, it was difficult to set up, but now that it's established, it's quite straightforward to pull that information off.
Okay. Got a question here from Julie Parrish. She's asking, are your referrals from adult social care, is it across all adult teams, including physical and sensory impairment, as well as older people's teams?
From as far as
I'm asking about IAG qualifications, yeah. What level
I'll let Sarah answer the qualifications bit, but as far as I'm aware, certainly the referrals that I get in from to low vision, they usually do come, nowadays they come via someone else in site service. So they come into site service and they're looked at by the enablement team, and as part of the identifying what support people need, then they get directed to low vision. But the initial referrals are coming from across the board. They can be housing association, they can be adult social care, because someone's being assessed to come back to the house to find out if they are okay to live at home still after they've been in hospital. They can be really, it can be a big range. It can be self-referrals into adult social care because a family member's worried about their parent, and it was identified they've got vision problems as part of that conversation. So it really is quite mixed.
I think with adult social care, the referrals do come from across that broad spectrum of adult social care. It'll be interesting actually to get a breakdown as to which team within adult social care, and that's something we don't do at the minute, but the team will probably have a gut feeling for that, so I could find that out.
I don't know how that would compare to a low vision service, specifically say a hospital-based low vision service, whether they would get referrals from that broad team. I guess the sensory support team within that council area might get those referrals, but if a sensory support team gets a referral from out that it doesn't come via the ECLO and doesn't come via the hospital, potentially it might come from the optician, but again we very rarely refer directly. Then they don't fully know the full extent of what's actually happening with the person's vision. So they have to base it very much on what the patient's saying. Now, I appreciate that some people have got a really good, clear idea about what's going on with their eyesight, but we do come across many people who really aren't that sure. The number of people walking around in normal community who are not visually impaired who just don't wear their glasses, you know, it is quite astounding. And for some people, that's what they need. But, you know, you wouldn't know that from sensory if you haven't had a clinical input. And that's a big difference with having optometry involved. I'm going to just answer the next one, and then you can talk about the IAG, because there's another comment just come in about Wales having a really good low vision service in their primary care optometry. I totally agree. They do have a good service. It's maybe not quite as integrated, and the fact that on a non-COVID period, the rehab work in the next room to me, and I can speak to them directly. But Wales have a completely different funding service system for their primary care optometry, so much is different. You can't really compare, unfortunately. But obviously in England, it's very patchy, and there's very few community low vision services at all, and only out of those, there's only a small number that have got optometry input.
Okay, Sarah, do you want to answer the question about the
IAG? So our team have just completed their IAG level 4. and I suppose it's probably a little bugbear of mine. So my previous job involved Ofsted and adult learning, and a lot of being part of the Matrix quality standard. So IAG forms a huge part of all of those quality frameworks, if you like. And for me, it's all well and good saying, oh, you know, we provide IAG and we've referred this person on to X. But if we don't follow that up, and if we just keep making referrals that then people aren't getting a good service for, so what? And I think that's, you know, Ofsted was a horrific experience. I'd never like to do it again. But what the key message was always, and so what? And for me, that's really, really important. So, you know, I referred someone to Stephanie for a low vision assessment. And so what? And it's being able to follow up. So our reviews after 6 weeks, the team through the IAG qualification, they've really learned a lot, that it's not just about giving someone some information and advice, it's about the follow-up, it's about the quality of that information and advice. It's not good enough to say, well, I passed them on to Visionary, because we don't know if that's actually had any impact. And if it doesn't, we shouldn't be doing it. We need to be making sure that our referrals are really, really high quality. So for me, that's critical. I think the IAG is a really, really important part of our work. Oh, there's Julian from Devon Insight. Oh, I'm pleased you're here, Julian. I plugged you at MOT, which is amazing. It's a fantastic system, and it was really underpinned all of our outcome framework review. It's just been unbelievably helpful.
Yeah, so Julian's just saying there, if anyone wants to contact him, julian@devoninsight.org.uk about the sight loss MOT outcomes and charity log, which Sarah has used, and I know many other organisations have used to great effect.
I have to say, from our point of view, if low vision hadn't started to be integrated as much as we had, I wouldn't have had any access to charity log, and we wouldn't have been able to do our COVID response in the same way that we have, because I've been, a lot of those 400 odd people that have been supported have actually been phone calls from home. So for the first number of months, it took us a little while to work out how low vision was going to integrate into the support, but once we got up and going, I've been doing, we call them triage phone calls, but actually what it really is a conversation with an optometrist about what problems the patient's having. Some of those are because the people were ringing us and they were worried and they were concerned, and some of those concerns turned out not to be low vision concerns, but they still needed someone to talk to, and being able to advise someone about their dry eye situation and recommend what they could do about it and what they could get was quite helpful for that particular person. Other people, it was directing that they needed to go to the hospital because it sounded like it was something that was quite important that they did go regardless of the COVID situation. And some of it has been actually identifying that extra equipment might be helpful for trying different things, various bits and pieces that I've been able to do with each of these phone calls. We have done some slightly longer consultation process where we've actually sent out opticians charts, reading charts and various things to do a phone conversation and try and get a little bit more clinical information over the phone, but obviously not the health checks. But majority of the support has actually been me ringing them up and having a half-hour conversation about their functional vision needs and their problems. And for some people, actually just having that conversation has been really helpful, and they haven't needed any extra support at the moment. But I couldn't have done that without charity log, because up until that point, all of my records and past records are all on paper, and they were in the office, and we weren't coming in the office for months now. I'm back in occasionally now to pick things up, and we are doing a face-to-face clinic again. But we've only been running the face-to-face clinic for a month and only 1 day a week. So obviously the capacity is a lot lower than where we were pre-COVID. So we're prioritising the new people coming through the service or anyone who seems to be really needing support face-to-face. So it is obviously quite different, but charity logs made a big difference to that because I couldn't have done it otherwise.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. We've just got a few minutes left now. Has anybody else got any more questions? I'm trying to sort of flick through and see if there's any hands raised. There's quite a lot of people on, so it's quite difficult to manage.
Can't see any more.
No. I don't know whether, Sarah, for the last minute or so, you might want to talk about how the hospital works with ECLO and hospital eye services.
Well, we have a really good ECLO presence here in the northeast. Well, certainly for site service in Gateshead and South Tyneside, we have ECLOs in both the RVI Newcastle with the Eye Hospital and Sunderland Eye Infirmary, and we do get referrals from both ECLOs, who keep in touch on a regular basis for those. So from that point of view, we have good relationships. I think there's an opportunity to better explain how our low vision service works to consultants and beyond ECLOs. We're in regular contact through the ECLO management and directly on the ground with referrals for ECLOs. But I think within the actual eye department, there's an opportunity there that I think we need to better promote what is available through our low vision service.
I think one of the biggest problems both eye departments have is that they have a massive catchment area. So Gateshead is one part of the Newcastle Eye Department's catchment area. And again, for Sunderland, South Tyneside is a small part of their catchment area. So trying to identify the bigger part within the eye department, not the ECLO so much, but the bigger eye department, they don't necessarily have time to try and work out where somebody lives and whether or not they fit within site services remit or not. The other problem we know, which is a big problem across the board, and it isn't just in our area, is that people do not get referred to the ECLO for support early enough. So they're sat within the hospital system for a period of time, and it's only when the person themselves said, I'm having problems, the person has to identify and actually tell someone they're having problems before they tend to get referred for a low vision magnifier or the ECLO, or they're coming to the end of the medical sight loss journey and being told that they need to be registered as sight impaired or severely sight impaired. And at that point, a low vision assessment or an ECLO appointment is generated. That's too late. The ECLOs know it's too late, but it's a massive piece of work, and it isn't just something that site service can deal with, to try and get that information out there. Now, there has been work going on nationally. There's been a lot of work going on through COVID to try and promote sensory support services and various other things. So that to try and just remind consultants and ophthalmologists that they need to be thinking about this and getting people the support. But to be honest, everyone's swamped. It's really, they're always difficult and busy before this, but now post-COVID, it's just busy and difficult, and they're limiting their capacity. And I'm not sure what the answer is, but it isn't something that we can solve just at site service. It needs to be. I'm hoping something will come out of the National Ophthalmology Transformation work, because particularly if we do end up with a lot more happening in primary care, which is obviously what the primary care optometrists and our national work for that is looking at, hoping to promote, will actually be in a better position to provide earlier intervention for access to these other support services. And I think that's a bit that's missed by a lot of the funding and the commissioning, is they don't fully appreciate that we would have more time and we would pick up these problems that the hospital aren't doing.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think we've just about run out of time, so I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Sarah, Stephanie and Carl. It's such a great example of partnership working. We've got loads of positive comments coming through, and I hope everybody has learned something new from this presentation. I'm sure people will be in touch. If anybody does want to contact Sarah, come to me through Vision Week and make the connections if you want to know any more.